I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to show you a new design working with SuperDuos as well as the RounDuo beads. And this is one that I had created when we got our crystal samples, so I had some fun with this right away. And this bracelet here is going to be made up a series of these tiles, or these stained glass windows is what they really remind me of. They do have a 3D-ness to them, that they sit up a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a bunch of them, and then we're going to connect them to do as a bracelet. You could also make this a simple pendant. It has a really elegant look. It's a little bit bigger than a quarter when you're looking at it, so it's about a 30mm around when you're kind of judging about how big it will be on your wrist. I have a very small wrist, and you can see the size that it will be, and we're going to be putting it on an angle and in a diamond shape. So we're going to make these little RounDuo stained glass little tiles, and then we're going to put them all together into a bracelet. For this, we're going to be using some RounDuos, which here in the sample are the crystal color, and then the lavender pastel that I have, and then some aluminum silver and some bronze metallic that I used on the sample. I'm switching up since we have color and I can work and play with color, and I'm going to be using the lava red of the RounDuos when I'm working with them. And I'm going to use the same color. You could switch up colors and use a different color on the bottom, but I'm going to keep it simple and go with all the same color of my RounDuo beads. I have a cut button, of course, that I'm going to be using to close it all off. And for that, I just have the cut button in a jet color. I have two colors of 11O seed beads that I'm going to be working with. This is the Duracoat Champagne Gold color, and then the dark olive color in the 11O seed beads, both the Miyuki brand. And then I have my SuperDuos, which are going to make this stand out a little bit more. And this is the white pastel light brown color for the SuperDuos. And you're not using a ton really of any one bead. The thing you use the most of are going to be the seed beads. And that's going to be my champagne color there as I'm working with it, that apricot-y gold champagne color. So we're going to start working with our wildfire beading thread. 0.006 in a white color is what I'm going to choose to use. I have a size 10 needle sitting here. I have a needle nose pliers, a wide jaw, just so I can squash down the ends. And then I have a burner and a scissors handy, so that way I can do that as well. As always, I'm working on a bead mat, and that's great to kind of keep traction and to keep your beads in place. So this project here is a one needle project, so I'm only working with one needle at a time. And I'm going to use an off-colored bead as my stop bead. I'm letting it fall down on about 5 feet of thread. This will get us more than one of our little stained glass sections, which is kind of nice because we won't have to thread the needle again. And I'm just going to take my thread and needle on the outside of that cream bead going up towards the long piece of thread. And what that's going to do is that's just going to grab on to the bead and cause that bead to stay in place, so that way my other beads that I put on won't fall off. I'm not leaving a huge tail because all I'm going to do really is knot the end of that tail together. So it's only about 3 inches that I'm leaving. We're actually going to be starting with the center of our stained glass window here and then working towards the back. The last thing we do is actually going to be to pull that back together. To start out in the center, I'm going to be using my RounDuo beads in that pretty red color, separated by an 11O bead. And again, I'm going to put on 4 of them with the 11Os in between, having 1 in each. And I have those 4 ending with an 11O, and I'm going to let them drop down next to that cream bead. Once they drop down in place, I'm going to round them out by going back through 2 of my RounDuos, as well as 2 seed beads, and then I'm going to come out the 3rd RounDuo. Once I pull nice and tight, it's going to get those to be in a round. So you can see those 4 beads that are right at the center here that are popping up. Those are going to be right here. I'm going to take my thread, and this is kind of a tubular peyote fashion, and I'm going to step up by going from the first hole of that that RounDuo there to the second hole. On the outside then, a little bit of thread is going to be exposed, but not too much that it's really going to be noticeable. When I'm at the section then, when I'm ready to add more beads, this is when we're going to be adding 3 SuperDuos at one time. So I'm going to pick up 3 of my SuperDuos. I'm doing 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to sew into the next open hole of the next RounDuo bead here. And those 3 are just going to stick out on the side then. 3 more go on. And then I'm going to go through the next hole of the next RounDuo. Pulling all that thread through. That gets your 3rd one in place, or 2nd one in place. Coming out of that bead then, 3 more go on. And we're going to go the whole way around, adding in sections of 3. I'm giving a nice tight little yank after each one because I don't want them to really have a lot of play movement. When I get ready then to go through my last bead, I'm going to go through the last bead and I'm going to do almost what's called a step up. To step up, what I'm going to do is just like I did with the first one, you're going to see a little bit of thread there exposed. I'm going to go the whole way through all 3 of the first SuperDuos that I added. So I add my last 3 in there, go through that RounDuo, go through all 3 of my SuperDuo. So I'm coming out between, oops, keeps wanting to fly off my bead mount here. So I'm coming out between, get out my knot here, that just happened. Coming out between a SuperDuo and a RounDuo. So you can see right there where I'm coming out. I'm then going to go through from the bottom hole of that round SuperDuo to the top hole of that SuperDuo and give a nice tight pull. And that's going to be that first look that you have, is those SuperDuos in 3 sections like a fan coming out of the RounDuo beads. Next I'm going to get ready to add more RounDuos. Where the RounDuos are going to get added is in between my sets of 3 SuperDuos. So I get a RounDuo on, sew through the next SuperDuo, give a nice tight pull. Next RounDuo goes on, sew through the next SuperDuo. In the blank space between those, that's when I'm going to add another SuperDuo. And that's it. So the SuperDuo is just going to hang out there. Again, I'm at my section of 3. So I'm going to add 2 of my RounDuos between those SuperDuos. So 1, 2 gets added. The second one there is added, and then when I'm in between and coming out right next to my RounDuo, that's when I'm going to pick up a SuperDuo and add that in. I'm going to continue that pattern the whole way around till I get back to the first one. So I'm getting ready to add my last SuperDuo in place, and I'm going to add my SuperDuo in place, and just like I did with the previous rows, I'm going to sew through that last SuperDuo to link it, and then I'm also going to sew through the first RounDuo bead that I put on this level. I'm then going to take my needle and thread, going from the first hole of the RounDuo to the second hole. Again, a little bit of thread is going to be exposed, but not too much. And then I'm going to come around and I'm going to do my beads that are in between the RounDuos. So I'm not going to add any more seed beads, I'm not going to, or any more SuperDuos or any more RounDuos. I'm just adding seed beads at this point. Between my sections where there's a SuperDuo hanging out, I'm actually not going to attach to that SuperDuo at all. I'm just going to kind of push that down. Between those sections, I'm going to put 4 beads of my 11-0 seed beads in that apricot color, that galvanized. Then when I'm on the corners here, I'm going to put 3 seed beads. This is going to start to pull this back and into a little bit of that kind of dome shape that I want. Next, I'm on the side. Just push that SuperDuo out of the way. I'm just picking up all the RounDuos. Give a nice little pull again. On the side, 3. When I'm at the corners, again, give it a nice tight pull. 4 in between where there's a SuperDuo just hanging out. Give a nice tight pull. 3's on the corner, 4 on the side. I'm kind of like a broken record here. I'm just going all the way around. giving a nice tight pull as I'm working to get that dome shape in effect. And 3 more then on the corners. When I'm done here and I'm getting ready to go back here into this corner, I'm going to sew through the first RounDuo that I was coming out of and back through the 4 11-0 seed beads that I just added. I'm going to give a nice tight pull, and then what we're going to do actually is decorate the edges of our RounDuo beads. Your seed beads here, your extra SuperDuos, are popping up at the top. Don't worry about that. We're going to push them down to the bottom. We'll deal with them later. Right now they're just out of the way, so I like to work at it from the back right now. On the sides and in between each of my beads on the RounDuo beads are going to be 3 of my darker olive seed bead. Give nice tight pulls every time you add a bead or add beads. So again, I'm kind of ignoring the RounDuos at this point, and I'm just sewing around in a circle, grabbing and pulling, just sewing through those galvanized seed beads. So I'm just sewing around that outer edge. And always 3 beads at a time. This kind of reinforces it and is making it sit up even more. So my 3 beads get put on the whole way around, and then once that's done, I'll show you how I'm actually going to push those SuperDuos to the back, and we're going to add some beads at the back so that way our nice little stained glass piece sits up nice and tall. Once you get your last seed beads in place, you're going to sew through those original 4 beads that your thread was coming out of. Give a nice tight pull. So that's creating here this little edge that you see. When you flip it over, you'll be able to see that edge, and you just see those darker seed beads just a punch, and they give a nice look to it. It's hard to see a little bit with that stop bead right in there. What I want to do at this point is actually push my SuperDuos that are at the front. You're just going to go with your fingers and just kind of give them a little push to the back, and they'll fall to the back, and we're going to use those in the back to make it stand up a little bit. So they just get pushed to the back and they'll fall back there no problem. After you give them a little push, and then they'll stay back there. If you want to have them back there at the start, that's up to you. I think they're a pain to kind of work around, but you can do that so you don't have to do that step of just pushing them all to the back. But they just went all to the back there. I'm going to give a nice little tug with my thread, and then I'm going to get ready to go in and add seed beads in the round. I'm going to add 5 seed beads between each of my SuperDuos there. To get to that point, what I need to do is sew through one of my rounds. So the next one that's in line, I'm going to sew through the top hole, and then I'm also going to sew through the bottom hole, putting a little bit of thread there right on the side. Taking my needle and thread to the back then, I'm just going to mask it because you don't really see that much, and I'm going to skip so that way I'm coming out the top hole of my SuperDuo there. Again, on the back, doesn't really matter what color seed bead you use. So whichever seed bead you have more of, or whichever seed bead you have laying out, that's up to you. I'm just going to now sew around. Again, 5 seed beads in place. And this is connecting to that second hole of that second SuperDuo that was added. You can see I'm just tying in or going in a nice round, adding those beads. And you're going to do this about 6 times for your bracelet, making this individual little section of the stained glass piece, and then we're going to add it all together. You don't have to add it together. Like I said, you can do it as a pendant, you can do it as a set of earrings. That's up to you, what you want to make out of it. But I'm going to come out of that last SuperDuo there, give a nice tight pull, and that's going to pull all of those beads there to the back into the round. You can see that my example that I made originally is just a tiny bit smaller. The original RounDuo beads that we had gotten were a tiny bit smaller than what actually came that was manufactured for us. What I'm going to do now is get rid of basically that stop bead and bring my thread to the back to get rid of it. So you can see I kind of took it to the back. You get a better look then. And what I'm going to do to take off that stop bead, you can either put a needle on your thread, or if you're handy, you can go in there and kind of pull it out. That's what I'm going to do since I haven't really tightened up my thread yet. I'm just going to go in and pull out my bead, if it'll let me. I'm going to pull off that stop bead. I'm going to tighten up that bead that I'm working with. That thread's going to come to the back, and what I want to do is I want to work my thread that I'm currently using with the needle, work this the whole way around so that it's coming out right next to the thread. You can, if you want to, kind of hide and mask that thread. I'm really not going to worry about it too much because, like I said, you're not going to see it at all. So I'm going to take my thread and my needle that I'm working with, go the whole way around here till I'm coming out right next to where that thread's popping back. And then I'm going to tie the two together. Again, I have a lot of extra thread. I did that purposefully so that way I could keep going and make some more of these. And all I'm going to do is tie those threads together. Give a nice tight pull. Again, you'll see a little bit of thread in there, but you don't see it at all, so it's not a big deal. And after I tie, I'm going to do a little dab of glue. And I'm going to continue on. Again, probably making about 6 of these. That's up to you, how many you want on your wrist. Again, if you want it as a pair of earrings, it's a pretty pair of earrings. There's what it's going to look like, and we're going to attach these together on the diagonal. So we're going to come in and actually attach these as we're working with them. So I'm going to make a couple more of these. Again, I have a pretty tiny wrist, so it looks a little bit larger on my wrist than it would actually be. And what you can do, again, 6 of them if you have a standard size wrist. I'm going to make about 5 of them and connect them all together then and add my cup button clasp. So I've gotten done most of my little pieces here of these little stained glass pieces. And what I'm going to do now is I'm connecting them. I've connected a couple. I've done 5, which is going to give me about a 6.5 inch wrist. If you need it to be a little bit longer, you can always add more beads at the connection, or you can do an actual 6th one of the little stained glass pieces. What I'm going to be doing is showing you how to do these connections. I've done 3 of the connections, adding 4 pieces together, so that way you get an idea of what it's going to look like. The other thing that I've done is I've taken my SuperDuo glue and I've glued all of my points of the little end threads. So I have a huge pile here of my end threads, and I've glued both the front and the back little portion. And then when I'm done connecting my pieces right here with my SuperDuos, I've also glued and done that. If you don't want a lot of threads showing, you can glue and cut both the thread coming out the top middle and the thread coming out the back, because I'm not actually connecting anywhere to those points, so I don't run the risk of sewing, getting ready to sew through a hole and having that glued shut. So I have sitting here still some of my SuperDuos and some of my metallic green seed beads and my cup button in Aztec gold that I'm going to use to close it off. So what I'm doing to add these and to connect all of my little pieces is I actually have a needle and thread, and originally I cut about 4 feet, maybe a little bit less, about 3 feet of thread, and I'm just doing all the connections off of the same needle and thread. What I'm going to do is I'm going through one of the sections of the little stained glass pieces here that have 3 of my goldeny apricot color. So I'm doing it on an angle. You could do this that you're connecting right at the sides too. That's up to you. You can make it look a little bit different by connecting them on a straight angle rather than at the diamond angle. I'm sewing through the 3 beads that are on the side there, and I'm taking my needle and thread, and I'm just going to be leaving about a 2-inch tail, because I'm going to get rid of that, and that's just used for me to hold on to. I'm going to add 1 of my seed beads, 1 of my SuperDuos, and another seed bead, and let that drop down next to my project. I'm then going to pick up my next little piece of my stained glass bracelet here and take my needle and thread through that, and I'm making sure when I am that these are going to line up. I don't want it to be backwards, so I don't want to be coming from the other angle. I want to be coming around in a circle. So I'm sewing through that and pulling the thread through, and then what I'm going to do is add another seed bead, go through the second hole of that same SuperDuo, add another seed bead, and then sew back through those original 3 seed beads that I was coming out of and sewing onto. I'm going to give that a nice tight pull, making sure my threads don't get caught anywhere. And that's going to tighten that whole piece up and add that next section onto this. I'm going to reinforce this whole thing by re-sewing through the entire piece that I just did. So I'm sewing through seed beads, SuperDuos, around in a circle. And this will take the beads will take the thread back through rather easily. So you could do it a third time if you wanted to. And you'll notice that it's gapping a little bit. That's okay because I'm going to pull it tight right before I tie it off. So I'm going to pull both the tail and I'm going to pull onto the piece that's still connected to my needle and thread. With my beading scissors, with my thread burner, doesn't matter. I'm just going to go in and trim off the connection or the piece that has the needle attached. So now I have these two tail pieces, and what I'm going to do is simply tie them together with a square knot. Right over left, left over right. And I'm making sure there's not a big gap in the thread. You can tighten it a little bit as you pull it, but if there's a gap there, it might remain. So you want to make sure that there's not a big gap there first. And I'm tying that square knot. You can see I switch hands rather than do the right over left, left over right. It does the same thing, but it confuses me less. I've just gotten in the habit with that while tying stretchy string, and I do that for everything now. And I have those little connection then finished. I'm going to take my glue and I'm just going to glue that connection right there, just the tiniest little bit. Let that dry and then I can trim it down. Make sure if you're doing this on a porous surface like a bead mat, you want to make sure that it doesn't glue down to the bead mat where you get these little holes from where the glue comes up. So you want to make sure to kind of hold it up, let it dry for a little bit. Once it's dry, you can take your thread burner or you can take your beading scissors, cut it down low. I always take my thread burner after the fact and connect to there as well. Once you do this and connect all of your pieces, you're going to have a nice little bracelet that's going to look great on the wrist. And I have just enough room. Again, I'm creating about a 6.5, 6 3/4 bracelet length. And I'm going to connect these and make a loop. So I have two of my SuperDuos left, one for either end that I'm going to use, loop on one side, and I'm going to use the cup button on the other side. So I'm going to get ready to do that as well. That same piece of thread that is sitting there on the side, I'm going to do just as I have been doing, where I'm going to go through the last 3 beads, leave myself about a 2-inch tail. I'm going to pick up one of my seed beads, one SuperDuo, and this time I'm picking up 2 seed beads. I'm going to go up through the back of my cup button. A lot of times I will add a SuperDuo to the top of the cup button. With this design here and color-wise, it's going to get lost a little bit with that beige fleshy color. So I'm just going to use 3 seed beads instead. I could pick up a red SuperDuo. That would look really nice if I had one handy. And come down the other side of your cup button. I'm going to then add one more of my 11/0 seed beads. Down, oh, sorry, 2 more. Down through my SuperDuo. Just like we were doing for the connection pieces. I've got it all twisted here. Add one more seed bead, so you can see the back side there. And I'm going to reinforce, just like I did when I was doing the connection pieces. Going back through those original 3 beads that I'm coming out of. Ooh. Knotting there with my end cording. Get that loose. And once I pull that through then, I have my cup button attached. I'm going to go in and reinforce this whole thing up through the back, up through my SuperDuo, up through my seed beads. And once I get the whole thing reinforced, coming down the other side and everything, I'm going to tie off the knot just like I did when I was doing my links. After I do that, I'm going to flip over and we're going to do the loop for the cup button to attach to. So I've gotten that all squared away and trimmed off and gone back and reinforced. And I'm going to do the loop on this side. The loop on this side I'm going to do the exact same way as I did the cup button. And all I'm going to do, go through those same 3 beads. So every time you're linking on, whether or not it's the clasp or actually linking on the actual little tiles here of my stained glass view, I am going to be doing the same formation. So for this one, I'm gonna do 1 seed bead on, up through my SuperDuo, and this time is where I'm gonna add a bunch of beads. So I usually add about 25 to 28 beads to go around my cut button. And I'm not really gonna count, I'm just gonna keep loading. And load all the ones that are on my bead mat here. Once I have those added, then I'm going to come down, just like I've been doing, through the other side of my SuperDuo. And that's going to create the loop. Oh, and I'm definitely going to need to go in there and add a couple more beads. Dump a couple more out, we'll add some more on, just so I know that it's comfortable to get on and off. If you make the loop too big, it falls off. If you make the loop too small, it's a pain to get on. So it's kind of a happy medium in between there. Add a couple more beads. And then down that SuperDuo, add 1 more bead as I'm coming out of it. Back through those 3 beads. And then again, reinforcing the whole little line here. One thing that I'm going to do here that I haven't done in many of the videos lately is I'm actually going to do peyote at the end here. It's going to decorate a little bit, makes it look a little bit more finished. And all I'm going to do is I'm coming out my first seed bead, and I'm going to pick up my golden color. So I'm going to use that gold apricot. I'll do 2 different colors here. When I'm coming out of 1 bead, I'm going to add another bead. Skip a bead and go through the next one in line. So I'm through 1, I've added a bead, I'm through 3. And here, because the end's not held off or tied off, you want to just kind of hold and push everything down. Again, add a bead, go through bead 5 as you're working on it. So it's just standard peyote that I'm doing. Add a bead, go through bead 7. And I'm going to work this the whole way around, just to get a little bit more of a fancy looking loop with those gold accents on the sides. If you don't know peyote, there's tons of other videos that we have that you can learn simple peyote. But again, I'm going to continue the whole way around here, adding my beads in place. And again, it's just going to kind of decorate my side a little bit. You can see it starting. I'm going to continue on till I come back down to the start and get ready to show you how to just tie it all off. So I'm adding my last seed bead in place there, and that has my little decorated peyote loop then. Adds a little bit of glamour to the end of the bracelet. I'm going to go down that seed bead, or that SuperDuo then, and down through the seed bead as well. And that's going to bring me out right next to this tail that kind of wants to get in the way. Same thing that I did the other side. I'm going to go in, cut my needle off, tie a knot, and then you have your bracelet completed. I'm just going to tie my knot, do a little glue, and trim my edges down. And then my loop is done, as well as my cut button is added. As I'm making this bracelet too, I have about 12 other ones in my head for all these new RounDuo beads. I'd love to do one that each little section is a different color, so that's an idea for you. If you want to get a couple different tubes of the O beads, or the RounDuos, I'm sorry, and play around. It would even look nice if you're doing different colors of RounDuos in the center and different color on the outside. You could also play with the color of your SuperDuo beads also. Again, I will go in at the very last thing and kind of burn down all of my edges that I have sticking up from the tops and the bottoms. But at this point now, I am pretty much done and it's ready to wear. It has a really nice, just gradual kind of outward push from that pulling back of our SuperDuo beads. And with the cut button, it's going to be really easy to get on and off. That little added peyote loop gives a nice look to it, but it's going to have a really nice little framed view of almost those stained glass pieces, and that's why I called this that stained glass RounDuo bracelet. And really you could wear it as a necklace too. This one would even work continuing back with the SuperDuos and the 11 O's in the back. It would also look like a really nice pair of earrings. So you could make a whole set out of the same design. Hopefully you guys are getting a chance to pick up some of the RounDuos in your local Potomac Bead Company store or online. We're happy to ship them out to you if you need them. You can also watch the rest of the videos playing around with these great check glass products and have fun making and creating. If you get a chance, subscribe to our YouTube page and we'll send you a message every time we put a new video on. You'll be able to look at it and like it and comment and kind of interact with us. If you get a chance, go to PotomacBeads.com, check out our locations page, and also if you need anything, you can contact us there. Thanks a lot for watching and have fun playing with these awesome new RounDuo beads.